Good to see you. My name is Rufai Oseni. But I don't know why we romance failure. I know you. In this country. We have become a country that romances failure. I thought you said you gave INEC 80%. In 2019, there was 35% turnout. 2023 elections, there was 25 to 29% turnout. This election, 15% turnout. Isn't that an indication of failure? Secondly, the election sheets totally mutilated. Shenanigan in the coalition center. A lot of bickering. The security authorities were seen in some areas with tear gas, ballot boxes taken away. And we are romancing this election. The election, the people have already shown you that they've checked out because they don't trust the process. One would have thought that this election, with the very high level of campaigning that went on, this is one of the most campaigned for area council election in living history. Area council election does not get this type of television awareness, but it got all the big honchos of all the political parties came to campaign, and people didn't say, come on, and you are saying INEC has done anything. It's not a shame on us. It shows that people have checked out, and they've forgotten the process because the process is shambolic. So what 80% are we giving INEC? They failed in this election, no?
Hypocrisy and hypocrisy have marked Nigerians. Rufai, Ayo, and Reuben Abati, Dr. Reuben Abati. I want you to just pay attention to this interview and see how it goes. Scoring INEC 80%. For what? So it's Rufai that spoke out. He said in 2023 they have 25% turnout. Now in FCT election they have 15% turnout, and you're scoring INEC 80%, and you're saying that they did well, and you're saying that everything went well. Well, anyway, I just want you to watch this interview. Very educative and very informative. We'll see you at the end of the video. Remember to subscribe if you have not subscribed. See you on the other side.
They failed in this election, no?
Okay, I don't completely agree with you, and the reason I don't is because participation is not just in voting. You have to also understand that election is a process. It's not an event. So where did you come from to get to the voting day? The first thing is that 95% of voters collected their PVCs. So if 95% of voters collected their PVCs, that is participation. That's an indication that they are interested. Now, if you lose interest in the process, if you've lost interest in the process, it is not just the government in power that is campaigning. The opposition is also campaigning. So if the opposition were able to bring out their people to be able to vote and vote out the people that they don't want, it then means that they should have been able to bring out the people to be able to make that change. So it's much more not just that people have checked out. It is that our attitude to election itself. Number one is that you are getting a situation in which voting is not compulsory. People may not necessarily want to vote. I agree that there are economic pressures. I agree that there are challenges, but I do not think that the response to it will be not to participate. And I've told you that they participate in different ways. They may not have turned out to vote. And then the consequence of not turning out to vote is that you have what you don't want. Whether you like it or not, whether it is 15%, whether it is 30%, whether it is 60%, the truth of the matter is that somebody will be in AMAC as chairman, somebody will be in AMAC in Kuje, somebody will be in Gwagwalada.
Now, before this test case election under electoral 2026, there was this talk about voting during Ramadan. These particular elections in Kano, Rivers, and Abuja took place in the season of Ramadan. Now in Kano, the ADC chairman said, well, the reason they didn't take part was because they were afraid of violence and it was Ramadan season. So that was why, they didn't bother at all. The Kwankwansia said the two candidates in Ngongo and Kano Central, they were children of the deceased former members who were anointed by Dr. Kwankwanso. Now, from what has happened, INEC being praised that there was no violence. Do you think that's because of the Ramadan season that everybody fasting just decided to be very calm in the spirit of this season? Wouldn't it then be a good idea in 2027 to hold the elections during Ramadan? If people are going to be well-behaved and there will be no violence, although some people still bought votes and try to rig the election. But if election is so peaceful during Ramadan, wouldn't that be the best way to go?
Well, Dr. Abati, you also know that during the Ramadan, there were attacks in some other states during the Ramadan where people were also, killed. So we can't make that conclusion that it has to do with... People can hoist whatever regime of excuses they want. There are those who participated. Those who participated were also fasting. They were also observing the Ramadan. And those who participated within the environment of a purported siege mentality that is created around violence. So those are regime of excuses that people hoist for not wanting to do what they should do. But you know that religion is a very sensitive issue. But also remember that even in other elections, studies have shown that the guns go silent during elections. If you notice in 2023, for all the party conventions that happened and all that, there were no kidnappings from people who traveled from various parts of the country to come and attend those conventions. They came peacefully and left peacefully. So, and in the places that are very, the insurgency is rife, during elections, the guns go silent. So, the push is that during elections is a festival in which people determine who governs them, and there's a budget to it. Somebody will control the budget for after elections, whether it is the subnational elections, state elections. Those who want to have access to that budget have some way in ensuring that there is peace for that election to happen. If at the end of the election, when they lose or win, their reaction to winning or losing is what then brings back the violence. On election day, generally, and you can do the study, you hardly see that level of violence that you talk about. There could be attempts, and all that is going away now, attempts to snatch the ballot boxes and the rest of them. And I will come back to my dear brother, Rufai. Many times you see that when you want to analyze election, you analyze in terms of scale. If there is violence in one polling unit, that one polling unit, for the media, it will be violent mass FCT election. But when you get down, you then begin to say, in how many polling units did this violence occur? How many polling units do you have in the FCT? If you have, say, 500 polling units in FCT and there is violence in 3 or 4 polling units, as bad as it is, it does not affect the quality of that very exercise. And so we can take out these things and look at scale. So it's not enough to say, oh, because there are 1, 2, 3 infractions in different places, then you put a black tar completely on the whole exercise. That will not be fair. People only come to work and then go back to the suburbans. And what that means is that quite a lot of people who work in the city center may have also registered in the city center and could not come out from their satellite towns to come and vote due to the restriction that was placed on election day. That could be a reason. But generally speaking, we've continued to see low voter turnouts, and that should be of concern. For the INEC, the logistics challenges were rife in terms of how their officials in many places on camera, we saw officials placing electoral materials on the floor, and the people who had responsibility to provide tables and chairs for those officials, many of them derelicted in their duty. And some of the officials that were also sent to conduct the elections did not show up in some of the places that they were supposed to. That created some kind of crisis. And then poor communication from the Independent National Electoral Commission in terms of what is legitimately correct to do in terms of splitting polling units. So that was not the challenge. But the challenge was that voters were informed late, and many of them are already in the polling units where they are voting before the SMS that we are supposed to tell them where they are going to be voting. I think we can do better than that next time. Voters should have at least 48 hours notice if you are going to be splitting the polling units. And then people need also to be patient in terms of taking the time. If you are supposed to vote somewhere and that place is congested and INEC says you can't vote there, we've made a better arrangement. We can take the patience to find out that there are people who did that and got to vote. But sometimes, as we know, election time is testy and a lot of impatience comes around it because of the nature of our elections. Politics is also a bit different.
All right, yes, I understand where you're coming from, that every election is different, but there are some similarities that exist. There's some fundamentals. For instance, INEC's efficiency and its preparedness to eliminate delays in elections, collations, ensuring that collation happens at ward level, security, those things are things that we can learn. And I think that, from the election over the weekend, unfortunately, some of those things were not solid. So, from that perspective, what are some of the things that the lessons ahead of the elections? Because we cannot go into elections in whether it's Osun or Ekiti or the presidential and gubernatorial elections next year without having some points to note. What are those critical lessons or things that INEC must take forward ahead of these elections?
I think the issue of logistics is perennial, has become a bit perennial, and I think INEC needs to do much better. Elections. I think that we need to ensure that INEC has the funds to be able to engage vendors early and pay them. Because if you don't do that, then you create emergencies. And once you create emergencies, discretion is at play. And once there is discretion, corruption is rife. So if we don't ensure that they have the resources to be able to engage vendors, the people who will convey materials from one polling unit to another, that the security is optimal in following those materials from the rack centers to the polling units and on time. Because what we used to see in the past, and I know that is being taken care of, is that very early in the morning, rather than going to the polling units, to the rack centers directly, the security will go to take numbers and do all the matching and all the rest of them, which delays punctuality index for those elections. Security agencies, we saw EFCC saying they arrested 29 people, and then on the contrary again, they say no, the lawyers are saying you can't prove vote buying, but in our laws, they are already, vote buying is bribery. So if it is done in the presence of the voting presence, I think that the security agencies do not need any push to be able to, get people arrested and prosecute them with the laws that already exist.